Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today, I'm going to be talking about this whole Overwatch League 222 role lock situation and what it means. I wasn't planning on talking about this until it was confirmed by the league, which probably won't actually happen until we get to the start of Stage 4 or the end of Stage 3. But it was pretty much confirmed by Fissure, the former main tank player for London Spitfire, LA Gladiators, and of course Seoul Dynasty, who just recently retired. And on stream, he said, I'm retired now, so I'll say it. Next stage, Stage 4, 222 lock is confirmed. Now the clip is in Korean. I will link to the Reddit thread in the description that features the clip and the translations. This comes from u/Sepirablo on Reddit. He also included a little comment down below, which says, Miro once, who Miro is another former Overwatch League player for the Seoul Dynasty, said on stream that he's not sure about OWL, but that 222 lock is confirmed for ranked, and then edited the comment saying Miro streaming now, and he just said that he mistakenly thought it was for ranked when it was for OWL, so I guess we don't know if it's coming to ranked yet. And this is really where the issues about this whole situation comes into play. You can obviously have the issue and the conversation, and you can just talk about the fact that we have had 3 stages of the same meta, essentially, with some variation as we've gone on. We had, some teams in Stage 1 who tried to do some stuff that wasn't GOATs. They tried to run a few DPS compositions here and there, but ultimately found out they wouldn't work and ran GOATs. Get to Stage 2, all GOATs with the occasional bunker composition thanks to the addition of Baptiste. You get to Stage 3, now we're starting to see a little bit more DPS start to play and a lot more Sombra, as opposed to just the traditional GOATs. And some of these teams that have been very dominant in the first 2 stages, the Vancouver Titans, the San Francisco Shock, aren't looking as good anymore because they're not as good in the non-GOATs meta, which is a very interesting thing to look at. And now there's the potential that we go into Stage 4 and you can't even play GOATs. You have to play 2-2-2. You have to have 2 supports. You have to have 2 DPS. You have to have 2 tanks. And of course, 2 DPS right now is where a lot of the teams aren't really running that mark. The thing is, though, that you need to understand is 2-2-2, it doesn't just affect those GOATs teams that are really good. It also affects your teams like the Valiant, like the Hunters, like the Dragons, who run multi-DPS compositions. They run 3 to 4 DPS compositions sometimes, and sometimes they're just running some 2-2-2 variation. But there are teams that run multi-DPS compositions for every match that they play, at least for some of it. So this affects both sides of the spectrum. There are some teams who are going to have to struggle in playing something that isn't GOATs, and some teams are going to have to struggle playing something that isn't their multi-DPS compositions. So it's a very, very, very interesting thing to look at with this whole thing. What's interesting to me also is the fact that there's talk that we're going to get it in the Overwatch League, and there's been people who talked about in the past, including myself, we need it in the actual game because the game right now is in such a horrible state to play, especially if you want to play a tank. Tanking just isn't fun right now, so nobody does it. So then you get stuck with no tank, so someone who doesn't normally play tanks is then playing tanks, and then it doesn't work. So then your game doesn't play well, and it's awful. But if they put it in the Overwatch League, and there's no changes to the base game that would, make it so that we can also play 2-2-2 role lock, that's a problem for a couple of reasons. The first problem is you then have a major separation between the Overwatch League and the ladder. If you're on the ladder and you want to play the best compositions that you can, like you see the Overwatch League pros doing, but they have to play 2-2-2, and you get into a game and you're getting into a game with 4 DPS or 3 DPS or 5 DPS, something ridiculous like that, you can't win those games a lot of the time because Overwatch isn't really designed for teams that have an absurd amount of DPS heroes to win matches. It's so difficult when you don't have a good tank, when you don't have a good support player, and supports are not that hard to find. You will almost always enter a game and have a support, at least one. It might not be the best support to have a solo support. They might be playing an Ana or a Zenyatta, which you have a solo support. You don't really want those two. You'd rather have someone like a Mercy or a Lucio or a Moira who can heal a lot. But it's a healer, nonetheless, so it's fine. But tanking is really where the problem lies. And tanks right now aren't fun, and it's a result of what we've seen with GOATs. It's a fallout of GOATs, but GOATs never died in the pro scene, which is what they think they were trying to do. They were trying to move the game away from GOATs. They nerfed armor like crazy. They buffed a bunch of DPS heroes in hopes that it would turn people away from GOATs and on to the DPS heroes. But the problem with that is that they made DPS heroes really good on the ladder, but they still didn't do enough that made GOATs not the viable composition in the league. So there's a major problem now where there's no connective tissue between the Overwatch League and the ladder, because playing GOATs on the ladder is, you can do it, but it's very difficult. GOATs requires incredible coordination, incredible teamwork. If you're playing the ladder, very rarely are you going to be able to find really great teamwork. Even if it is with a bunch of people who are very good at the game, it's the way that people converse in the game is nothing compared to the way that the pros do it. The pros obviously have a much different mind than anybody else. So the idea that, GOATs is the really good meta outside of the Overwatch League is, frankly not true. So you get this major disconnect already between the Overwatch League and the ladder. And now, if you do 2-2-2 this way, where you only implement it into the Overwatch League, you have an even bigger disconnect, especially because the base game, or the ladder, it needs to have this 2-2-2 lock, because we're at a point right now where the game is so frustrating to play. If you're a DPS player, it's frustrating because you're not getting the other roles that you need to be able to win a match. And there's obviously the idea where if you are someone who plays DPS, or you play support, or you play tank even, a lot of the time, especially if you play support or tank, when a DPS player says like, oh, can someone switch over to support, or can someone switch over to tank? The answer is obviously always, well, you can switch over if you're a DPS player. But at the end of the day, not everyone's good at playing support and tank. Maybe some people only play DPS because they're good at DPS and they don't really know how to play support or tank very well. Because main tank especially is a very hard role to play. You need to know how to, position, how to protect your team, all that kind of stuff. Support, a little bit easier, but if you're just not good at support, you're not good at support. There are some support heroes that maybe you can be good at, like a Baptiste, like an Ana, like a Zenyatta, but maybe you just don't play those heroes because you're not good and you don't enjoy them, and you just haven't really put in the time to learn them because that's not how you want to play the game, which I understand that. So if you're a DPS player, it's frustrating because you're not having supports or tanks to keep you alive, and you're just kind of feeding. If you're a support player, it's frustrating because there's so many DPS players and you're not getting a lot of help from another support usually, or if you are, you don't have a good enough tank to keep you alive, so it's frustrating in that way. And then if you're a tank, it's frustrating because tanks are already frustrating enough to play, and then no one else wants to play them. So you're stuck as a solo main tank and you have no support, no help. I meant support, not in the role, just no one's helping you out. And it's just very frustrating. And it's the issue that we have in the game. But it doesn't seem right now like there's any evidence that we're going to be getting 2-2-2 in the ladder, and only we're going to get in the Overwatch League. Which brings me into the second problem with this whole thing, is that if you don't put it into both, the game isn't balanced. The game as it is right now is not balanced for 2-2-2. The game is balanced for whatever you want to run. If you want to run 6 DPS or 6 supports or 6 tanks or 4-1-1 or 3-2-1 or 3-3, you can. That's the way the game is currently balanced. It is not balanced to handle 2-2-2. Some heroes like Brig, if it goes to 2-2, they're gone. You can't play a Brig because Brig doesn't heal enough. And now I know there's a lot of people out there who hear that and just go, oh, amen, we need 222, we gotta get rid of Brig. Ooh, I hate Brig. Because everyone but me apparently hates Brig. But the idea that you would basically kill a hero entirely, she would become incredibly useless, is a problem. Now look, Overwatch League pros would see that and they wouldn't care, because they hate playing Brig if they're a DPS player. They just despise it. They don't want to play Brig, they want to play Pharah, or Tracer, or Widowmaker, or McCree. They don't want to play Brig, and some of them want to play Zarya. I mean, Zarya is definitely one of the more fun tanks to play, and she is more damage-oriented, so she's a pretty fun hero to play, but there's so many heroes that just don't get play because of what we're seeing. And when you do 222 lock, yeah, we'll see some more of those heroes, but the game isn't balanced for that. And Jeff Kaplan has talked about this several times. He did an interview with Stylosa several months ago now, where he said 222 would make it a lot easier to balance the game, but getting to that point is, of course, a lot of work. Making it specifically 222, role locking, and potentially role queuing if you do 222, it's a lot of work to get there, but once we've gotten there, it's not as much work to balance the game and balance the heroes. It's a lot easier when you know that you don't have to worry about, well, how good is Brig in a 4-1-1 composition? Is she too good in a 4-1-1 composition? Oh, she's bad in a 4-1-1 composition, so we need to make sure she can do her job well in a 4-1-1 composition, but if she's in a 3-3 composition, she's not too strong, and you run into all these different problems when you try to balance for the infinite number of possible compositions you could have. And you still have a large number of compositions when you have 2-2, but you know for a fact, like, you're not going to have to worry about Brig being, the third support. It's either Brig is one of the two or she's not. And it makes it easier in the sense that you can balance the game better. But if it doesn't come to the latter, then the idea of them putting 222 in the Overwatch League is just not good, because that isn't the game. That's artificially creating the game, and that's an artificial creation of the meta. It's not a natural creation of the meta, in the sense that the game devs aren't making that the way the game should be played. And if you lock it at 222, that's artificially creating a meta anyway, because you're saying you can't do this or that, you can only do this. But we've seen it work over time. When the game originally came out, you could play any number of any heroes in any composition. You could have 3 Bastions on the same team if you wanted to. They got rid of that because it didn't really work. You look at games like League of Legends. I know Monty Krista made a video about 222 role lock, and he talked about this. They've made it where you can have specific roles and specific, champions that fulfill specific roles, and it works. 222 role lock would work. The problem that, of course, you run into with if you do queuing and whatnot is the increased wait times. Tanks would wait like no time at all. DPS players have to wait like 30 minutes potentially to find a match. Supports would be kind of in the middle. But I think over time what you get with that is, as you add more heroes, as you add more tanks, as you add more supports, which is what they should be focusing on adding right now for this reason, is people are going to start kind of moving to the other ends. DPS players who want to play DPS are going to stay. But if there's a player who, they will play whatever role, they might say, look, I just want to play the game, so I'm going to just migrate over to playing tank a lot more often. And there's this new tank hero that's really cool, that's really fun to play. I want to play this hero, and we'll move in and we'll start playing tank, and they'll start getting at games quicker, and then you'll kind of get more of a balancing act. But when you have so many more DPS heroes than tanks or supports, of course it's going to have more people that play them, because if you have a row of people where every single person there, 30 people, and every single one of them mains one different hero, well, the majority of them are going to main DPS heroes because there's so many of them, which makes sense in the way that the game is played, but it's a problem in the sense that you run into the issue of no one wants to play tank or support, because if you don't find any interesting, you don't have a lot of options anyway. So there's a lot of things that I think are necessary for 222 to become a thing. And I'll end this off by just saying, I don't understand the idea of doing this. I'm sure people have thought this through a lot. I'm sure there's a lot more that we just don't understand yet about what's happening. And maybe by the end of the week, maybe this video comes out and then a couple hours later, it's like, hey, we're actually adding 2-2-2 role lock into the base game, into ladder. And everyone's like, oh, huh. But the thing is, I feel like this is the kind of thing that if you want to add into the game, it needs to go on the PTR. And it needs to go on the PTR for a while, because you have to balance the game. You have to balance the heroes. You have to check out where it is. This is the kind of thing that I think would have to be on the PTR for a month and a half before you can even put it into the live servers, so you can tweak heroes. And then you have to tweak them a bunch again. To me, 2-2-2 role lock is the kind of thing that you put in between the Overwatch League seasons, when you have the ability to really work things out and figure everything out. I don't think this is the best direction to take it, just because I think you're really pushing this too quickly, and I don't think it's going to be a smooth transition, a 2-2-2 role lock right now, especially if it's just a forced one by the league and not by the game itself. So those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, what you think about the whole 2-2-2 role lock situation. Are you in favor of it in the ladder? Are you against it in the ladder? Are you in favor of it in the Overwatch League and the ladder? Just the Overwatch League? I'd like to hear your opinions down below, and what you think about the potential future of the league if there's 2-2-2 coming back. I mean, there's a lot of players sitting on the bench right now that could see a return if we go to 2-2-2. We got Striker with San Francisco. We got Pine with New York, just to name a couple. Like, some very good players that we haven't really seen yet this season that I would love to see again, just because they're so good on those DPS heroes. But we're not really seeing DPS, so we're not really seeing these heroes get played. So the players that play them, don't hit the stage. But that's everything I have for you today. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing, as it helps out a bunch with the channel. But I'm going to get out of here. So until next time, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all later.